Hi, I'm Susan Gill. What brings me to it is I do work at Ask. I have a daughter she's 30 now, and I feel like the bookends, Mindy and I are kind of the bookends of this panel with the older children. What brings me to this conference is I think the conference is wonderful as far as networking and parent support and learning about options in the community. Our family's experience is a little bit different. We first had a daughter who had osteogenesis imperfecta, and then we have a daughter, Healthy, who is doing fine. She's the blonde with the rainbow hair, as somebody said, that's working at the conference today. And then we have our youngest, who is intellectually disabled. For us, it was a little bit different because we went back to calling our AEA because we had worked with them with our first daughter. So that was our experience.
Hi, I'm Dirks. I have 4 kids that are 8, 6, 3, and 1. And Lainey, my oldest, she just turned 8, and she's my daughter with special health care needs. She is deaf, blind, and has multiple other health issues. And then what brought me here today is I've actually attended the conference the first time probably 5 or so years ago, 5 or 6 years ago. She was pretty little then. It was just an excellent resource for learning about networking to begin with, and then all the other different agencies around the area. I didn't know about a lot of them, so it's a great thing to come right now.
My name is Leila Hussein. I am a parent of 3 children. I have a 6-year-old, a 3-year-old, and an 18-month-old. The oldest 2 are diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. I heard about this conference actually through a Facebook group. I think somebody put a petition out, if anybody would like to talk, and I was like, well, would you even want somebody who has no experience? Because I really have no. I mean, I have a very short time with our diagnosis, but we had special needs or issues probably for a year preceding that diagnosis that we were aware of. So I was really excited to find that there was conferences, because I feel like I learned the most from other parents and all these resources. It's like you crack open the door and it's like there's so much behind it. And so I'm kind of in this waterfall of information that we're still trying to sift all through. So that's really just my perspective.
Hi. I'm Mindy, and I have 3 children, all 3 with special needs, age 19, 16, and 13. And then I'm also married to a disabled veteran who's 49. So I've kind of started when the kids were little and kind of worked our way up to all sorts of issues, anything from testing and getting diagnoses all the way up to college now with my husband and my son, and getting my daughter through high school. So we've done a lot of different things, learned a lot from conferences like this. Started in Georgia, not in Iowa. And so I'm still learning a lot about Iowa, even after 7 years. I've been to this conference quite a few times. Every year I come back learning something new, so I figure it's always worth going if I can pull it off. And this year I'm pretty sure I've learned a few things I didn't know about, and a new agency I'd never heard of who might be able to help our family pay for some things, which is always nice.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited about that.
All right. Actually, I'll just let you keep it if you want to, Mindy, and we'll just kind of go back and forth. So what we'd like you to do now is to tell us a little bit about your experiences when your child first became eligible for special education services. You can come at it from a couple of different angles. You can talk about going through the testing. You can talk about your initial IEP meetings. You can talk about if there are things that you wish you had known prior to going into all of that. And then also any other information that you think it would be important for parents to know. So just kind of take that and share your experiences with us.
Wow, there's a lot there.
We do have a time limit, Mindy.
So I guess for me, there were some really basic things in writing, always. And it's so easy when you're trying to be nice and you want the teachers to like you to not push for that, but that's just really important. The other thing I guess that I wish I had known more about was how to get doctors and teachers and principals and everyone on the same page, and that took a lot of work. I learned that communication was the key to almost everything. So I'm constantly, when a doctor tells me something, can you put it in writing for me, please, in a way that I can tell the teacher? So my teachers get lots of letters from the doctors as well, trying to help specify things. And sometimes that's hard because you have to figure out ways to put it into an educational goal, which is another thing I learned, is you have to kind of learn to speak the language. And I guess those are the most important things I learned, is that the language thing was really, really significant. And still today, every day now that I'm in college with my son and my husband, is learning the different ways of getting educational goals translated from medical goals is really, really important. So,
Okay.
and you're always important. You're part of the team.
Absolutely. And Lady, I think with you, this kind of being a new experience, it's probably even fresher in your mind, even than it is for Heather, who's a few years removed, but not quite. So yeah, that'll be really helpful to people.
We initially started the process because we put our children in a program through it was a local church. It was called Parents Day Out, and it's like a preschool, but maybe like more like between a daycare and a preschool. So anyway, we put our children in there, and they started to notice things about my daughter that we didn't know, and she was 4 at the time. And so they didn't really want to say the word autism. So they just referred me to Grant Wood, and that just took a little while, our local AEA, to get into that referral. It almost took 3 months, which, looking back, one of the things I learned is that as soon as you have an inkling or thought there might be something, there's just nothing wrong with asking and having it checked out. Because if it's wrong or it doesn't lead anywhere, it's great, but 3 months doesn't sound very long. But when you're struggling within the issues that you're seeing, but you don't really have words to describe what it is, then it's a long time. And so anyway, we got into the Grant Wood AE program. It wasn't early access because she was too old, but we had a son, and he exhibited similar tendencies that we thought, well, if you're going to check her out or evaluate her, then would you evaluate him? And interestingly enough, because he was under 3, that evaluation took 1 hour. But to get my daughter evaluated, it took a 60-day period where they had to come into the school and observe and do all these things. And so it just seemed like I just didn't know anything. I really didn't understand the process. I didn't understand what they were looking for because nobody would say the word. They said call the University of Iowa and call the CDD, I guess I always get it wrong, the CCD, whatever it's called, that place. You need to have them evaluate your child, but they wouldn't ever say autism. I mean, they literally would not, even when I say, do you think it's autism? Because of course, when they say, well, yeah, it seems like she just won't concentrate, and she likes Play-Doh a whole bunch, and she claps her hands. So, as a mom, I'm like, Google, flapping hands. Okay, what's Dr. Google say? Dr. Google says it's autism. And so I didn't want that diagnosis, of course, and so I did what any good parent, I think, does. You're like, okay, I'll call the right places, and we get on a waiting list. And we get on a waiting list for about 9 months before we actually get to see a doctor. And that, to me, is another issue that I ran across, is that if you don't have a diagnosis, there's sometimes not much people can do or give you. And I'll talk about it later if there was just one piece of advice. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I really wish I had, you don't know until you are presented with a situation to look at things, but I felt like I'm a pretty persistent parent, and I did a lot of research, but while there's so many resources out there, there's almost no resources there's the 100-day toolkit that Autism Speaks has, but there's not any kind of tool out there that says, so you suspect or you might have been told your child has developmental issues. What do you do now? Because you need that that first, maybe you wouldn't call it 100 days, but you need that. What do you do in the meantime when you don't have a diagnosis? When you don't have any resources that people can give you therapy for, you can't get into the RAP program. You know what I mean? There's all these things that don't have access to, but you need those resources. So I think there's definitely still a need. The great thing about these kind of conferences is because you get to see there's so much out there, and I didn't realize it, but at the same time, there still is a need for those parents who don't have a diagnosis yet. So.
For us, it was a little bit different. Lainey went to the NICU when she was born. She was there for 8 days, I think, and we left knowing a social worker was coming out. So I think she was 2.5 weeks old when we had a social worker from the AEA out saying, okay, we're going to be following her for her. We didn't know at the time. We knew she was deaf, and we knew she had brain abnormalities, so we didn't know what that was going to look like. So they sent early access out right away to get us started pretty much as soon as we got home from the hospital. And then as she started missing more milestones and other things came up, we just added more services. But we were already connected, so it was easier, I think. And then kind of the same way, we're still in the process of getting our diagnosis. Just in the last year, she's been undiagnosed her whole life, and then we went through a whole exome sequencing, and so she has 2 genetic mutations, only 2 other people in the world have, but it still doesn't explain everything. So we still don't technically have a diagnosis to put in those boxes, so that's been a little bit difficult too, as far as getting services as to what we can do and what they'll cover without an actual diagnosis. But that was our journey of getting started with like the IFSPs and things and early access. And then we, just as she turned 3 and went to preschool, we graduated to the IEPs and went through that transition.
All right, thank you. Susan?
Our first daughter had an IFSP, and then, so it was a new experience going from that to an IEP with our third daughter, Kaylee. And it's kind of ironic because what I do, majority of my work, is to explain to parents about the IEP. And in Iowa, you're real fortunate to have 2 areas, the FEP, Family and Educator Partnership, and Ask Resource Center, the Parent Training Information Center, to help you with a lot of the questions and going through that to understand what the IEP is. And I tell a lot of times, one of the things I tell parents is to ask them to explain, ask them what that would look like. You know, they tell you they're going to work on this and they're going to do that, and I'm still not getting what it will look like for my child. And so that's one of the questions I always say that they should ask. It isn't easy. An IEP is always hard because you're talking about your deficits that your child has, and you're trying to figure out how you can help them work on goals to improve those deficits. So it's pretty emotional. I learned early on, there's a long time when I went to an IEP meeting and didn't have tears afterwards. And so that's why, and my husband, I think, terrible to say, but I think a lot of men want to go in and just fix it. And this is really hard because they can't just fix the situation. So I did find that it's good to have outside support besides my husband, and meeting other parents, and that gave me a lot of support, plus asked a lot of questions. Anyway, okay, so that's the main thing is, I guess I have to push that, but I do feel that Iowa really, parents are really fortunate. There are people out there to connect with, to help you, and the community, that's why it's wonderful to go through all the exhibits here and see all the community resources.
All right. Okay, Susan, so now you get to tell us about one of the successes that you felt that you had when the girls were in school.
When Kaylee was in school, what I thought was really successful, you'll hear a lot of talk about transition planning and how you will have a goal in the area after your child is age 14, you will have a goal, they'll have, if they're on an IEP, they'll have a goal in the area of living, learning, and working. And with my daughter, I thought, okay, we're going to really plan this out. In her last year of school, she worked in the morning and she went to a, at the time it was called a enclave, which they no longer have right now, or they no longer have, but she went into a business with a group of people that had some disabilities and worked there. And it was wonderful, it was great, and I felt like the school was really wonderful for us to all work together for that transition plan. And I can share later how she got fired, but that's part two.
And I would say sometimes it can be confusing because you'll hear about transition planning in two different age spans. There's the Part C to Part B, which just has to do with funding. It doesn't really mean anything, and it seems backwards to go from C to B instead of, in education, we just like to confuse people. So, but that's the change from the birth to 3 early access to early childhood education that starts from 3 and then goes on. The transition that Susan is talking about is secondary transition planning, which happens when your kiddo turns 14 and you're kind of doing the long-term planning of what that person's life is going to look like through high school and then beyond into adulthood. So if you hear that, it can get confusing, but there's transition from C to B, and then there's secondary transition planning. So, I'm sorry, go ahead, Heather.
I guess for us, just this last school year in general has been a success for my daughter. She's profoundly deaf, so she communicates through sign language, and she has an interpreter at school. And this year has really been great for her to start advocating for herself and really using that interpreter to her advantage instead of just someone who's there. And then she's really been succeeding this year in socializing as well, which has been something that's pretty hard for her to do. They started a sign language club, so all of her friends go to it, and so they can all communicate with her, and she's just been really successful this year in all areas. It's been a really great year for us, actually.
That's awesome.
So I have two, and for my daughter, when they first took her, when she was finishing our preschool, they said, well, she's going to go to kindergarten now, and so they recommended a school in our school district that has an autism program. And so one of the things I thought, well, I better go check this place out. I want to know where she's going to be at and what's it look like. And we went to the autism program, and while the school was wonderful, and I think they help children in many, who, especially if they're more profoundly autistic. My daughter does seem to have she's been diagnosed as moderately autistic, and so I felt that because of her tendencies to mimic and to do certain things, I really did not feel like that school program would be good for her because of the other children she might mimic some behaviors. So the great thing is Cedar Rapids Schools has a program for what do they call it? Not charter school. Oh, what's that called? Well, it's thank you. Magnet school, and
It takes a village, right?
Yeah, it does. At Magnet School, and the Magnet School, they just had started the second program at Kenwood. They had one for STEAM, and they started Kenwood one for leadership, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm gonna throw her name in the lottery. And because of that, she was chosen to attend that school, and it's leadership, and it's based on Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which for a child like her, who could tend to be a little bit of a follower, I thought, oh goodness, this will be good to help give her leadership skills and teach her some independence. So that's, a blessing for a parent to have these options to allow our children to, go somewhere that fits their needs. So she's having a really great time at that school. For my son, this is, he went to a 3-year-old preschool because of his special needs. And a nice thing, again, with my school district, they received a grant program. It's like, I think the stars align sometimes. But just as he was supposed to go to a preschool program, they called me and said, well, we have an opportunity for you, and it's at your same school, and it's with just a different teacher, but she got a grant to attend special learning. It's called Leap. It's for teaching children with autism, and I don't know, there's not a lot. I think there might be only 2 school districts in the state of Iowa that got the funding to be trained in this, and your teacher was one of the teachers chosen. I was like, oh my goodness, yes, definitely switch him to that classroom. So it's a peer initiated program that teaches social skills. Everything they do in the classroom is peer initiated. The peer is a snack captain. I mean, there's a million things they do, and they integrate so that children like my son who have social issues because of his autism, it teaches him at a very early age how to be more social. And so those are the best, successes that I feel like looking back in the past year that we had. Just the stars aligned for us, for both of our kids, to have good programs that really honed in on what they needed.
That's awesome. Thank you. Mindy?
For mine, I guess I have 3 kids. All 3 of them have had really interesting years. But the most valuable success I ever had started with a complete and utter failure. When you have teenagers, there's always things that go wrong. And I've learned the hard way. But my now 19-year-old was constantly, he has Asperger's autism, anxiety, depression. He's tried to commit suicide several times, almost succeeded once this year. And we, actually, it was the end of last school year because he was bullied so much. And unfortunately, it was a failure of communication in a lot of ways, and a failure of just the system just couldn't catch the bullies, and we couldn't get it to stop. And so there were a lot of problems with it, to the point where he really felt that that was his only option, which was a horrible experience. But I can honestly say that for him, it changed everything, because for the first time, everyone saw the things that were happening to him and took them seriously. And we were able to come up with a plan with the school for the first time about what to do, how to help him. He was scared to go to school after he got out of the hospital, so we had to develop a safety plan. And he finished a lot of his classes at home. And I had to learn a lot about what other options there are for kids, because he was so close to graduation. He was on the verge of either becoming a high school dropout or graduating, and we had to decide which way we were going. And of course, as a parent, I've worked so hard with him, and he's worked hard, that we didn't want to see it end that way. So we were determined, and it took a lot of work. There was a lot of police involvement several times, the bullies, because my son unfortunately decided to fight back, and he was 19, which creates all sorts of problems with the justice system and the school system and us and the social workers. And it was very complex, and it felt like it was a failure, but he turned around, and the school system came up with a new program, and he's now part of what's called the Access program, which actually means that he is actually in 2 weeks graduating from high school, but he won't get his diploma because the high school is actually paying for him to go to classes at the community college. And he started the classes in January when he finished his online courses with the high school, because he had completed his graduation credits. And he has gone to 2 classes. He's almost finished with his first semester and is not bullied. He's made friends. He's joined clubs, which is unheard of. And he is doing so well that they've signed him up for fall. And he's planning to look at other options for college in the years to come. He's even talking about going to a college in Virginia, which kind of scares Mom. But it was a huge success, and he's learned a lot and matured a lot because of it. And then the other one that I just wanted to mention too is my high school student is a freshman this year. And she is really funny in a lot of ways. And one of the things she's very insistent of is she's very competitive. She loves to be in a typical classroom and show them that she can do everything that everybody else can do. And she has autism, and her reading levels are very low, but her comprehension's very high. So she often understands everything that's said in classes. And so instead of being in an enclosed classroom, she's in the normal classroom most of the time. However, when the high school schedules came out this year, we found out that 80% of the time she was in an enclosed classroom. And that was devastating to her. And instead of Mom calling, she actually decided that she was going to take charge for the first time and became her own advocate. And that was an amazing moment for me, where I realized that I taught her enough skills where she could do it herself. She went in there and told the teacher, look, this is not okay. This is not what my IEP says, and you need to fix it. Those are pretty much her words. And they took her very seriously, and she has become a huge partner in her IEP program. She's informed them that she's just as capable as the other kids. She just has to do things differently, and that she should have access to everything. So they rescheduled everything, and changed the way they even taught some classes so that she could participate in fashion class, which, by the way, she won every contest that class had. And she continues to amaze them. She's taking math and science courses because she wants to be a doctor someday. And although I don't know if that'll happen, she needs to at least have access to those courses. And the way they were previously teaching them, they weren't going to teach her the skills she needed to succeed at all. And so she made it clear that I want to do this and I can't do this without these, so you need to fix it. And they did. And so that is a huge success. And it just shows that if we start young and teach our kids to speak up for themselves, they can do it. And that was really exciting and impressive. And I was like, yay, does this mean mom gets to retire? So
just a quick clarification, Mindy. You said your son is going to go or has taken some community college classes.
Yeah.
Is that a 4+ program?
I don't know. It's called the Access Program. I think it is in the Quad Cities. So it's Scott Community College. And basically it's kind of an in-between. He's taking courses that, because his classroom courses in high school don't quite work to be the same as like what most people start with in college, he's actually taking things like composition and writing, because he's only written like an example of a composition that's maybe 2 pages long. And, most of us know when you're in college, you need to write 5, 10, 20-page papers, and he's never done that. So this way he has the ability to start learning how to do that, and they're giving him the tools and the skills to learn how to do that in a college environment, which has really changed things for him.
The only clarification I wanted to make, because I used to be in the transition world at the DE, 4+ programs, in case you don't know, although he may have met the graduation requirements for his high school.
He doesn't get his diploma, but he walks the stage with his group in 2 weeks. He's walking the stage, and his diploma, when we do finally pick it up, will say 2017 May. But
that shouldn't be.
Yeah, every school district does it different, is what they told us, and that's how they're doing it. And his college credits are actual college credits and will transfer. Yes. But the school is paying for them, not us.
Yes, so it's a 4+ program. And this is just stuff that, as part of the Department of Ed, maybe I just understand the intricacies a little bit more. Although he can walk, and that's totally fine if he's met their graduate. He won't truly graduate, because the program, the 4+ program he's going to be taking part in, is still a secondary program. It is not a post-secondary program.
Yeah, I think you're right, because he actually does have an IEP team still, although we are on it by choice, not by law. But he has the high school teacher who was his IEP team leader, and the college has a liaison as well who comes in, and we all meet together and talk about his goals.
So it's more of a thing for us to understand the differences, but there is a subtle difference between the college and the 4+. So I just wanted to clarify that a little bit.
Refer to it as something else. I mean, 4+ is the correct term, but it could be senior plus.
No,
well, and they're not. Program. Yeah, they're not saying program. He was in high school any longer than what his peers are. It's kind of weird how they have it set up. I was a little bit confused by it at first too. It's
okay. We won't
there's a lot of different
questions about that, and your kiddo gets to be that age. Look me up. I can help. Okay, we won't spend any more time on that because we have some other questions we want to get to. So you talked about the successes, and we really appreciate that. But we also know, whether we have kids with IEPs or without IEPs, there are also challenges that go with having your kids in school, right? So we would like you to talk to us a little bit about some of the biggest challenges you've faced in dealing with the school. And you can kind of go at it from a couple of different angles, or if something else strikes you, that's okay too. You can talk to us either about a situation that you faced where you maybe had to fight a little bit more than you thought, and how that came to a resolution. Or you can take it from the aspect of knowing what you know now, and that situation came up. Would you approach it in a different way and maybe think that the resolution either might have come sooner, might have been a little bit different? Talk to us a little bit about that, if you would.
I guess that's one of the hardest things is we've had so many successes over the years. I had to really think about challenges. And the truth is there are a lot of challenges, but we get over them and then we think of them as successes, in our case at least. We've never had a place where I just really felt it was like this horrible failure that we just couldn't overcome or we didn't succeed in finding a way around it. So to be honest, this took a little bit of thinking for me. And what I came up to the conclusion of is my biggest challenge with all of this has been there are times in my children's life where I had just gotten a diagnosis, I think, or I was just floored at what had happened at school with the bullying situation, or when the school wasn't prepared to handle my daughter's physical needs. My youngest daughter is in a wheelchair some of the time, and some of the time she's not. So it completely floored me, even though it's in her IEP. They said, we can't do this. And I got very emotional, and there's times when you get scared for your children and you get emotional and you want to cry and scream. And those were my biggest challenges, is learning how to separate those feelings from what is really going on in the eyes of the educators, and having to take the time and say, okay, put those feelings aside. I usually went and talked to a friend, cried, yelled, screamed, whatever I had to do with my friend. And then I would go to the IEP meeting with a new perspective, which was, okay, these are the goals we need to talk about. This is how we need to talk about it. And I think that a lot of those things were things where it was just so emotional. It was very difficult. The bullying and the suicide attempt was probably one of those times where I really felt really low. I felt it was a failure as a parent. I felt overwhelmed and scared and frustrated, and yet I had to talk to the school and I had to find ways to change things. And really, the biggest thing I found out was that I needed to constantly ask questions, constantly try to stay ahead of the game. So kind of plan ahead myself before I talk to them, say, okay, what would I do? What would I love to see? What is my best circumstance that happens? And then work on that with them. And the communication part, really, I just found over the years was the best way to handle that. So
Thank you.
Well, I talked a little bit about my daughter's experience at being recommended to a school that had a strong autism program. And I think that, like you, looking back, it was a great thing. But at the time, because of the way we were working through an IEP, it was at the end of the school year. The way it works is that the preschool teacher recommended where she should go, and I blindly went along with that, and she recommended this school. And at the same time, it was in the paper that they were taking open enrollment to this magnet school, so I just threw my daughter's name in there, not really thinking she would get it or get in, and so she did. But everything, like I said, the stars aligned. I go tour the school. It's instinct. My instinct tells me it's not the right place for her. And, but I had to push so hard while we had another option, they wanted a decision. And I had to push them very hard to allow me to go and meet the principal of the new magnet school, to take the time to figure out where she should go. And after that all happened, and we think we were, in the right place, I said to the school system, or it was Grant Wood with the preschool, I said, I'm curious of why you chose this school, Garfield, for this program, yet, right down the street was another school right by our house. Why you chose that school over this normal school, knowing that you didn't feel like her needs were, that she had she has moderate autism. And the preschool teacher, while, I really like her, she's like, well, honestly, I'm not familiar with all the schools. I just knew that there was this one out there. And so I said, wow, that really surprises me. And she said, that's part of the problem with, I'm focused on being a preschool teacher. I know of the school, but there is a deficit or a gap that I feel like Grant Wood or whatever the school district should have had somebody advocate for me, and me not knowing, maybe not advocate, but be a partner with us to say, here's like 4 options you can go down. You can put her in this school, you can put her in this school. But it was just, if that magnet school opening hadn't happened, she would be at Garfield because I didn't know any better. So I think that to me, I found through this process, there are some, again, gaps in things that me not having the knowledge or just not having experience in education. And then second to that, the IEP process in general is very complex to me. I have now done it. It'll be a year. We started our IEPs with the kids back in May of last year, and here we are again. And it's like another language. I'm not in education. I work in the business world. My husband, he's a hairstylist, so we are totally not educators by any stretch of the imagination. We're loving parents, but we don't understand the language. And so there's meetings happening, and they're bringing, for my son, they brought like a crew of people to my house to have I don't understand any of this, and they don't really explain it, and I don't know to ask. So it's not like, they'll say, well, we'll be at your house next week. We're going to have a transition meeting, and okay, I'll see you next week. And then 6 people show up. And I don't really know. I didn't know what each of their roles were. I didn't know who they were and how they were playing a part in this. They all seem very, looking back, you always know more later. And so I probably could have asked questions, but I didn't really know what to ask. I just was going along with the process. And so stepping back from it, looking, what I would probably change is, we get a great manual. I think they give every IEP meeting, they give me this parent guide. I don't think I've read it yet. I'm going to be honest. I'm sorry. It's really long, and I have little time, and I have 2 children, and that are autistic, and I have a baby, and I'm like, okay. So what I would say is, I need a short list. I need a page, and I need one thing that tells me how this go, and maybe a flow chart. You do this, then you do this. But right now, and I'm just being honest, it's quite overwhelming. We've worked through as much as we can. I don't know what, because my children being different in their needs, but having a similar diagnosis, I don't even know what options to ask for. My teachers, my school district, they've been great. I mean, I will say they're wonderful people. They all mean very well. I just don't know if what I'm getting is subpar. Is it, perfect? Is it need to be more? I don't know. I don't know how to judge that. What I guess interventions they're getting. I really don't know. And I know I don't speak the education language. I know the things that I see at home that I can bring to the table as a parent. But other than that, and I do feel like I have to walk a line. I have one of my teachers is really, well, both the teachers came from a special education background, and one of them she's pretty strong, has a strong personality. And I'm not saying that makes me back down, but it makes me feel like, yeah, I can trust you and what you're saying. But, there has been times that I felt like maybe I should ask for something else or ask for a little more. And I'm afraid to ask for it because I want my relationship with those teachers to be good. And I want them to give me the benefit of the doubt and give my child everything she needs. And I don't want a negative relationship between us. So I just am always super careful, very respectful of what they do, and hope for the best. And I sometimes worry that I'm putting too much of that into that, or too much without, like, I'm not doing enough. Like, I need to do more, and I just don't know what that would be. So,
thank you.
I would say our biggest failure has been not getting my daughter the services she needed soon enough. She was in first grade before she got her interpreter, and it was after a 3-year process and battle with our school, and we finally had to hire a lawyer to get one. And ASL is her only language. She can't communicate any other way. She did 2 years of preschool when she was 3 and 4, and there were half days. And we were pushing for it then, and they were saying, well, her expressive language isn't good enough at this time. You know, we can't, see her getting an interpreter and using it correctly. And it wasn't as huge of a deal at the time because we had a great preschool teacher who she knew sign language. Her background was in it, and so she was wonderful. So she had something in preschool. When we got to kindergarten, it was a whole different ball game. She was there all day long for the entire kindergarten year. We were fighting the whole year. All she had was one associate with her who would carry around an iPad and look up a sign throughout the day as she needed. So for the entire year, we basically had nothing. She was sitting in school, getting nothing. And our kindergarten teacher was ready to kick her out the first week of school because she was having behavior issues, because she was sitting there all day long doing nothing, and they didn't understand that. So I think our biggest failure was waiting that long to finally say, okay, we're not getting anywhere, enough's enough, we need to get this for her. And so we finally did that. There was I think that kindergarten year we had 7 IEP meetings, and one of them, we had like a 5-hour-long meeting, and it still ended scheduling another meeting because we couldn't get through everything. It was ridiculous, and just very frustrating. We had a few agencies that we reached out to come advocate with us, and they were wonderful. And we just went down the road. Ask actually came to our IEP meetings. We couldn't get anywhere. They contacted Disability Rights Iowa for us, who contracted out a lawyer for us, and that's finally how we got it. So last year was her first year with an interpreter, and it's made such a huge difference. And even this school, and I will say, she said like her special ed teacher was going above and beyond during that year. She was going and getting extra training after school when she has her family of own, trying to do everything she could for her. So we've had some really great people that were trying to help us along the way, but it just wasn't working. But so last year was her first year with an interpreter, which is why I think this year has been so great for her, because she's finally to where she needs to be and has the services she needs to be successful in school and actually learn something. So I think our biggest failure was just not following through sooner. And a lot of the reason is because I didn't want to burn those bridges. We knew we were going to have to work with those people for, however many years we were going to be in that school district. So I think that was our biggest.
I just have to say something. Find out who your FEP is in your area. Because when you have 6 people coming to your house, say, do you have a parent that you could send? Grantwood used to Family Educator Partnership. And Grantwood used to have where they went for early childhood meetings or IFSP meetings. But anyway, that's what I just had to say that. And on that parents' rights manual that you get, if you look on the front, sometimes it has a contact information for an FEP, or it might say PEC, but on that back page, I know in Heartland, and I'm pretty sure in other ones, it has it listed. And what I would do if I was at that meeting with you, I would have circled who that was in your area. Sorry, I just had to say that, guys. But anyway, what I want to say is one thing that I think we struggled with at school, because you would always change, elementary, middle school, high school, all that, was communication. And you have to really work all the years that your child is in school to have that good communication with the school and home. And it goes both ways. I did learn that a communication notebook, anything written always sounds harsher, and you have to kind of let that roll off your back and make sure when you write something that it doesn't sound harsh, because you want to have a good communication back and forth. I don't think they realized, for us, it was since my daughter couldn't speak and couldn't let us know what went on at school, anything that they could give us, whether there was a fire drill, or if whatever happened that day, if they could let us know. I remember in the evenings at the supper table when the family would talk about how the day went. And our daughter was starting to be more verbal, and she was talking about somebody naked on the bus. And my thought was, oh, that was the last thing, she's just saying that. And we were talking about how you don't share stories and on and on and on. And come to find out, there was a boy they were having trouble with that was stripping. He was on the spectrum. He didn't like any tight things, and he was having trouble stripping things off. So she was telling, I really wasn't upset that there was a naked boy on the bus. I was more upset that they didn't tell me. And because the problem was resolved, but here I am telling her not to make up stories and trying to relate how we can't lie. And so there's different things like that I think communication is really important.
Okay, since we're coming down to the end of our time, I'm actually going to combine a couple of things here. So I would like you to talk about if your son or daughter receives any services that are not connected with the school, and if so, how you became connected with those agencies, and then any last thoughts, if there's anything that I haven't asked that you really feel like it would help other parents who are on this journey of special education. So I'll let you do twofold there, and then it will be about time to.
Okay, you're going to have to cut me off on this one, because this is where I get on my. 30 seconds, Susan. This is where I get on my soapbox. It is so important while your child is in school to build up those outside relationships. I can't tell you how important it is. It goes by very fast. And when your child is out of school, if they don't have a circle of friends or some outside community that they're dealing with, they're isolated. And that's not the school's job. That's our job as parents, to really build up those friendships. My daughter was involved at the time they had VSA. They had a dance team, and through that there still is. There's a lot of dance studios out there that whether you have a boy or a male or a female, there's opportunities for dance. There's a lot that have what do I want to say? Some alternate dance classes. I know the first time they said, well, we'll see how it goes with my daughter. And when they wanted her to point her toe, she pointed to her toe. But that is one thing. She really built a lot of friendships through a dance group that she was involved with. She does a cheerleading through Courage League. They went to the Special Olympics this year and got first place. And she does karaoke with friends. She was involved in the Best Buddies program in high school. And I'm just rattling all this on because I want you to hear these words. Check out, see if your high school has Best Buddies program. See if your neighborhood fitness center has any kind of programs. There's a Bike and Mike, where she exercises on the bike and she sings on the karaoke. That is so, they even built a bigger room because they had so many kids involved in it. Anyway, and so there could be something like that going on in your area, and find out about it. And remember, it's not just the kids in her class or his or her class. It could be surrounding schools where you could get together. Maybe you're 20 minutes away and they could have a Best Buddy there. But we have to help them get that started.
Yeah, as far as services go, my daughter's also gone to Child Serve Forever for additional therapy services, which has been great for us. But then we go to Courage League as well, and she does classes, and she does a dance program here, Dance Without Limits, that's for kids with special needs, and they're amazing. She does Miracle League baseball. There's an Iowa baseball camp for the deaf that she does every summer. There's just a lot of resources there to get her connected with other things, and she has a blast. It's so much fun to watch her and her friends. So I think that's important as well, to definitely reach out to other families and kids so they have connections themselves.
Okay, now I forgot the question. Okay, hang on.
If you're connected with any outside agencies that are not connected with the school, and or if you have any last thoughts you'd like to share with people.
So both my children are get full services as well. We go to therapy for occupational therapy, speech therapy, play therapy. We're starting a social skills. We're just got off a waiting list for ABA, so we'll start an ABA therapy next month. We do a little. We had to do a mind map or a map in another class of what we do with all of our all the things in our life, and my daughter does take dance class and takes a theater class for autistic kids. But my son, we haven't really started doing anything with him yet. He's 3, but we're going to start. And so, we do have a ton of things. The one thing I would say that I learned through this whole, life's change, I guess you would say, alternate path, is that I really felt like I had to learn to say things multiple times. So when I knew that there was a need, I would ask, and I went back and thought about how many times I asked for the same thing. And it took about 3 tries of asking for things for either it to click with the person I was asking, or the clinic or the resource, because it probably was just a language. I'm speaking in this language. They understand it in this language. They might not know. I'm not exactly asking for that direct program. I'm asking for what I might need, like behavioral services. And so it just really made me realize that the squeakiest wheel gets the grease. I really have, and we all have to, as parents, just keep asking, keep plugging away, keep going against that, the wind, and especially in Heather's example of just pushing through. And I think I learned that, and I'm glad I learned it early, because it's only been a year, because I know this is going to take me through the rest of our lives. So,
thank you.
That is so true. I guess for us, our children are involved in a lot of different things. They're older, so throughout the years, we've added things and taken things out. I've learned that the most important thing for us was support groups. I can't stress enough how important it is to find other families who get it and can share a bad day with you or share a good day with you, or build up other people around you who support your family and understand. Being prior military, that was one of the things that we really struggled with when we were younger. I was all by myself when my daughter got her first autism diagnosis, and how it felt to be completely alone and surrounded by nobody you knew and how to help. It was just devastating. And my husband was off in a field somewhere, and so I had to deal with that myself. And I found a support group that was awesome. So I think that that's like a really important part, that the parents are getting the support they need as well. And my kids have gone through dance classes, sports, and we do a combination of adaptive and special, and then typical stuff too, because we try really hard to make sure that they're exposed to both. Because sometimes my daughter wants to feel herself and not have to worry about if she's doing something that might offend somebody, or if she can't do something the way the other kids do. And sometimes she wants to be like everybody else, so she'll try her hardest to just fit in. So sometimes it's best to have a combination of those things. And it's taken us a while to master that, to figure out what she can and can't do for all 3 kids, really. So I think that that's the most important, and that sometimes you have to choose what services. Like when my kids were young, I realized my daughter was going to therapy every day and she never played with her friends. So I made a decision that we were going to do some play therapy, and instead of doing physical therapy, we stopped doing that for a while, stopped doing speech therapy for a while. We took turns with therapies and focused on just being a kid too. And I think that severely impacted the fact that she wasn't getting that time with other kids really changed her once she started getting that other time with kids, just being kids, playing at the park, hanging out at the zoo, whatever it was. I think that was a really big choice that I made in the right one. And so I guess my only advice thing that I learned is that you're part of a team. So be educated, figure out what it is that you can contribute to the team. And you can, because frankly, you know your child better than anybody else. And don't let them stop you by saying, oh, you're just a mom or a dad or just somebody who's coming in and you don't have experience or knowledge, because you do. Because when I first started, we were in Georgia, and I was constantly told, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. And I went back to school and got my degrees just so that they would stop saying that, because it annoyed me. So, and then they did start treating me differently, actually. So, just make sure you stand your own ground, because you are an expert and that you deserve to be part of the team because your child needs you.
Thank you. And the other thing I would say is, don't ever feel like you can't ask a question. If they're not explaining it in a way that you can understand it, ask it again. Ask it differently. They owe you those answers, and they owe you an explanation that you can understand. And, just like if I went into, to a business where they were doing actuarial science, I would have to ask 10,000 questions about what they're, to even get an inkling of what's going on. It's no different. You know, it's your child. You need to understand the system. So continue to ask questions and don't feel guilty about that. So please help me thank these ladies for sharing their expertise.